Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, the U.S. Supreme Court rules on two cases that expand the president's power over immigration. Also tonight, the Iran war's enduring effects on the global economy. And we'll hear from the 2026 Teacher of the Year as determined by the Arizona Educational Foundation. Those stories and more next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your public television station.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. The U.S. Supreme Court today issued two major immigration decisions, both in favor of President Trump's efforts to control immigration issues. One of the decisions restricts the government's temporary protected status program. The other allows the U.S. to turn away asylum seekers at the southern border with Mexico. For more on this, we welcome Elizabeth Chatham. She's with the immigration attorney and partner at Stinson LLP, and Evelyn Cruz, a director of the Immigration Clinic at ASU's Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law. Good to have you both here. Thank you so much for joining us. Help us make sense of what's happened. Liz, we'll start with you. These were both 6-3 votes, both wins for Trump, for the President Trump, and really gives him, the executive in this case, the authority over immigration issues. A lot more than we thought, huh?
Definitely. It's definitely expanded, the authority, especially on the TPS case, Doe case. It was definitely decided that the Department of Homeland Security Secretary would have the authority to make a determination on whether or not TPS designation was appropriate for our country. And, that's a pretty powerful position to have.
Indeed, TPS, temporary protected status. All right, Evelyn, what exactly happened today that changed?
Well, under the immigration laws, the Attorney General is accorded the power to do the will of the Congress as far as the laws are involved. What it did is that it created a window for the Attorney General's decision making not to have a check on it. There's no one who can say, well, that is not the proper way of seeking this enforcement of this rule. In addition to it, the court opened the idea that individuals who are non-citizens residing in the United States under TPS or perhaps other areas may not have full access to due process. The court at one point says that their rights to sue because of discrimination are not available to them. That they might be able to sue the state, but not the federal government. So
and a lot of Haitian immigrants here, a lot of Syrian immigrants here. Obviously, they had been allowed to live and work legally in the U.S. It was created by Congress back in 1990, this particular program. But I think that what I kept hearing from the administration was temporary means temporary, and these folks had been here a long time.
Right. And, the temporary protected status, the nature of it, there's always vulnerability, but there's definitely analysis, investigation, checking in with other agencies to help the secretary make the decision of whether a determination should continue or change. And there's usually a little bit of a lead up to warn people that might be in that category that there might be a change upcoming. Here, I think that there's been some notice, but many times it's a very short runway in terms of announcing that there's going to be a change in the determination. And in the dissent, I think the criticism wasn't so much does the authority exist for the secretary to make the determination? It was just what factors were being considered to make that determination. And the dissent felt like that was valuable information that should be available to anyone that's impacted, and whether or not those determinations and those factors were tenable.
Right. And again, the temporary status was for folks who came from areas where there were war, there was disaster, like in Venezuela right now. You could probably make a case for some of those folks. But it was, again, designed to be temporary. But again, if Syria is in a civil war from now into perpetuity, you're always going to have a problem there, aren't you?
Yes, but the idea is that the Immigration Act gives the federal government different tools that they can use on managing different ideas. People who are here on temporary protective status do not have a pathway to permanent status. There's no way that they can become lawful permanent residents through this process. So that is one of the reasons why temporary protective status provides protection on a larger scale. An individual who is fleeing general crime or a civil war, or a natural disaster like we just saw in Venezuela, would not qualify for asylum. Yet we cannot deny that the person has a reason, a human rights reason to be able to get some protection. And so, so that is the role it plays. If we decide that someone from Syria can never go back, we can use a different tool to provide them a humanitarian assistance.
Interesting. I want to get to the second one, and this one deals with asylum seekers along the U.S.-Mexico border, and this seems like it's a ramped-up version of what the first Trump administration was doing, correct?
Yeah, so, the big change with this decision is that the interpretation of arriving in the United States, that's the language that was being debated by both the majority and the dissent. And the majority took the position that in order to be eligible to be inspected by Customs and Border Patrol and to have that asylum application even reviewed or accepted, you had to physically be in the boundary of the United States. And the reason that is kind of a big deal is the idea of the port of entry doesn't really have a true, quote, boundary. This decision almost makes like a red line territorial boundary.
Yes.
And the metering, that's the term that was used when there was a lot of asylum seekers at the border. Metering is when CBP undertook a mechanism in order to determine how many cases can they process a day. So if there's hundreds of people waiting in line, they can have them pre-adjudicate. They could do applications technically online when One CBP was an app that was available but is now no longer available. And they also had the right officers, CBP officers with experience with asylum. And then they would make a determination as to how many people they could process that day.
Right.
They would even now, what was happening and why this case even came up in the Supreme Court was that CBP agents that were stationed in the vehicle entryways, the pedestrian entryways, the actual offices that they would put people into additional questioning and secondary inspection, those officers were being tasked to leave those areas, go out into the Mexican side of the border, and then basically stop people from coming across.
And we're running out of time here, but that really is the thing here. The idea is that you can, it's okay to prevent them from crossing and putting that foot into the U.S. territory.
The idea that territory is a clear delineation is something that has gone back and forth between the courts over many, many generations. And it is the one thing that confuses my students the most, because you can literally have someone in the middle of Kansas City and they're not in the United States. So this constant division about what it is, it will continue, even if Justice Alito says, oh, we can make a plain analysis of this by everyday rationale of what is physically in the United States. And I don't know about that.
All right, Evelyn Cruz, Liz Chatham. Good to have you both. Very complicated cases here. We got some more coming down the pike, too. Yes. Good to have you both here.
Thank you so much.
If and when the Iran war officially comes to an end, the world's economy will likely look much different than it did before the war started. Everything from a shift in power when it comes to energy producers to warnings of slower growth and higher prices could make for a new economic landscape for the foreseeable future. To learn more, we welcome ASU economist Dale Rogers, our go-to guy for supply chain. And I guess we could talk a little bit about supply chain, but overall, the effects of the war on the global economy. What do you think?
Huge. I mean, it's huge. You take out 20% of the world's supply of oil, And truthfully, what we do is we run things pretty just in time. And while the Middle East is not as much of a source of oil for us as it used to be, it was a dramatic hit in the economies, particularly like in Asia and Europe and so on. The world's kind of mad at us about it.
I would imagine so. The disruption at the Strait of Hormuz, I mean, how long before deliveries and trade and the whole ball of wax, how long before that activity is trusted?
You know, we talked around COVID about turning the faucet back on and so on. To have everything get back totally to normal, if we're going back to normal, it's 2 to 4 months, I would say, generally. Now, I understand Iran attacked a ship from Singapore today, so who knows if it's really over or it's not over.
With all that going on, are we seeing other energy producers, the Venezuelas of the world, the Brazils of the world, are they starting to be on the ascendancy or what?
Well, you know what's really interesting? For a president that hates renewables, probably he has done this year more for the renewables industry than anybody in the history of the world. So you're really seeing renewables ramp up. And you know, it's because you can use those not just for fueling vehicles, but also for electricity. And there's huge strains on pretty much everybody's electric grid.
I saw a report that in April, wind and solar generated more power globally than gas for the first time ever.
And I think it's going to continue to go up. So the U.S. idea that we're gonna stop doing renewables, you know, they're paying a couple $2 billion to a firm to quit doing a wind farm off the coast. It's nuts.
With that in mind, though, isn't that a good thing for China? Because I keep hearing and reading that China is lapping us when it comes to renewable energy. Are they now the go-to place?
They're lapping us in most things, truthfully. Yeah, they really are ramping up renewables because they have a huge issue. I mean, their population is more than four times the size of us. And so they desperately need electricity. And one of the problems is our, you know, sort of grid infrastructure was designed a very long time ago, and it hasn't really been upgraded. So
but with all this in mind now, I mean, we saw kind of an ebb and flow with electric vehicles. First you couldn't find them, then you couldn't sell them. Now it's like, are they coming back? Are they coming back in a different way? Are they coming back with Chinese models? What's happening?
Well, I don't know if you've been to other countries, but like, for instance, in Brazil, I was down there recently, and it's incredible. It's like every third car was a BYD or one of the other Chinese brands. And they're cheaper than other options, and they seem to be really good vehicles. Now, we're pretty much keeping them out of the U.S. They do have an office in California, but you're seeing them all over the world. And truthfully, I think China has won the EV war for the time being.
Okay, so with that in mind, and with the idea that, you know, the global landscape as far as the Strait of Hormuz and oil and crude oil and these sorts of things has changed, I mean, the fallout from this war, how long is it going to last, and what does it look like when it's over?
Well, there's a bunch of different pieces to this, Ted. One of the interesting things, so Iran can hold the Strait of Hormuz hostage, but I don't think they can do it for 10 years. I think it's less than that. I would say maybe 5. Because if you look at what the Gulf states are doing, there's a big pipeline. It's already kind of there, but there's more capacity going across Saudi Arabia. And then there's one on the other side of the strait as well. And so you're going to be able to avoid, and of course, pipelines are cheaper to push oil through, not cheaper to make than shipping crude oil and so on. But I think long run, that's not going to be the strategic sort of chokehold that it is right now.
So with that in mind, long-term planning, long-term growth, how does the war, can you do that right now? Or again, is it just too fuzzy?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the U.S., it's so disappointing. I mean, there's been so many things we did kind of wrong here. I mean, we didn't seem like we won the war, for one thing, and we didn't get what we wanted out of it. And Iran has really learned the power of that. We've kind of changed the nature of the Gulf, and we've alienated a lot of our allies around the world. So one of the sort of offshoots of this war is everybody's looking at, well, wait a minute, can we trust the U.S.? And so let's look for other ways to do it. And that's a long-term change that I don't see is going to change back. It could be really quite negative for us.
I would think the reversing what's happened would take an awful long time to happen.
I think so. We're in the early stages of the transition. We were just talking about Chinese EVs.
Yeah.
You know, we have 100% tariff on them. Canada had 100%. When we started being weird with Canada, they went to 6% tariff on Chinese EVs. How many Teslas are they going to sell in Toronto or Montreal versus BYDs, which are pretty good cars and substantially cheaper?
All right, Dale Rogers, ASU economist. Very interesting stuff. It seems like it changes by the day. It's good to have you here.
Good to see you.
Tiffany Joseph has been named the 2026 Teacher of the Year by the Arizona Educational Foundation. Joseph teaches special education at Copperview Elementary School in Sahuarita School District, south of Tucson. We recently got a chance to meet this special teacher and learn what makes her lessons so special.
Well, congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
What did you, when you first heard about it, what was your reaction? What'd you think?
I describe it as kind of a moment that stood still. It was just absolutely incredible. And I hugged my friend Tyler right next to me and just kind of let out a cry. And then it was just overwhelming gratitude.
And over time now, you have to adjust. You're a big deal now over time. You become a big, your thoughts on this recognition?
It's just such an honor, and I love that I get the opportunity to have a voice for my students and my families because, as you saw, I teach special education, and so it's just like an honor to be able to share about them and to continue learning as well.
How'd you get into teaching?
I just knew it was something I wanted to do. So back when I was, in college, I decided I wanted to be a teacher. I just never looked back.
Yeah, but general education first, then kind of morphed into special education, which is a special calling.
Yes.
And this is so cool that you're getting this. Why'd you make that move?
Honestly, I think that's the key word right there is calling. It was just something I was interested in. So I got my master's in special education, and from there wanted to put it into practice, and I fell in love with it. And I really just wanted to help the students who were more underserved and who just needed more.
The differences in teaching general education students and special education students, there is a difference.
There is.
What are the differences?
The main thing is that in special education, everything is more individualized. And so my main curriculum isn't necessarily the state standards, it's what they need to get to these state standards. So I'm looking beyond the curriculum and I'm seeing what is it they need? How can I help them to access the general education classroom? Some of my students don't speak. Some of my students are in wheelchairs. So it's about inventiveness. It's about being as creative as possible to meet their needs.
I would imagine it's also about making sure that there is a general education contact there, that it's accessible, that they're not just over here, but they're also in the entire school.
Absolutely. So my school is a model school, honestly, for what inclusion can look like.
Yes.
So I do my best to work with the general education teachers and my inclusion assistants, the ladies that work with me to help the students, they do that as well to help them to get access. How can we make this look? Where can we sit the student so it works best? We want them to engage with their peers. So my students are a part of the community just like everyone else.
You've mentioned that you're strength-based instruction tailored to diverse learning styles. That's that one-on-one thing, isn't it?
Absolutely, and looking to see what can we do to help them learn? How can we make this accessible for them?
You know, I noticed that a couple of quotes here that I want you to comment on because these are such special quotes. Your number one curriculum is love.
Absolutely.
Explain,
Absolutely.
please.
So, I don't believe students can learn unless they feel safe and they feel valued and they're emotionally and physically regulated. So if they come to a place where they feel loved, it's going to make them happy. It's going to make them want to learn. It's going to just open all the doors for them.
And that's even for students who have problems communicating and problems even with their emotions.
Especially for them, honestly, because those things can lead to behavior problems. So they need to know that they're at a place, they're with a teacher who loves them, and that they can make mistakes, and it's a new day. We can move on.
You also say that you want your kids to know that they have a place in the world. Boy, is that important for these kids.
Absolutely. Just because they may have been born different or have different needs doesn't take away from the fact that they deserve to be a part of this world and to be included.
Families, parents, probably a little more contact with them than the general education crowd, huh?
Absolutely. I honestly, because of my program, I can have students for years. So if they come to me in kinder, I might have them through 5th grade.
Wow, that's
so
right.
I create meaningful relationships with these families. I consider them part of my circle. I mean, I can text them, they can text me. We're a team, and it's pretty amazing.
Well, and that's so important for the kids, too, to have that continuity.
Absolutely.
It would seem like it would be.
Yes, and they know. So if I have a student who might be getting in trouble, they know I'm going to call mom or dad, and we're on the same team.
Yeah. All right. So now you're the Arizona Teacher of the Year. You're a candidate for National Teacher of the Year. You're going to get a week-long trip to the space camp in Alabama, correct?
Correct.
You got an honorary doctorate from NAU. Dr. Joseph, congratulations. And you get to throw out a first pitch at a Diamondbacks game.
Yes.
Holy smokes, that's a lot going on.
I'm going to practice for my throw.
Well, good for you. And you get to go to Washington, don't you,
yes.
for the national, I think you got a pretty good shot at. Do the kids how much I guess some probably do and some maybe not so much realize that their teacher's pretty special?
I don't know if they truly do understand, right? But I think that for the students and their families, I think they know something special happened, especially when I had some special guests come in and record us. And so I think they had an idea. But to them, I'm just Miss Tiffany or Miss Joseph.
Yeah. Last question here. You are Arizona's Teacher of the Year. Teachers out there having a tough time of it these days. What's your message to teachers?
My message is to do your best to listen to your heart and to follow your heart and to believe in what you do, because we truly are making a difference, and just don't let the hard days win.
Yeah. Tiffany Joseph, 2026 Arizona Teacher of the Year. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
We're proud of you. Great job.
And that is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
When you want to be more adventurous, Arizona PBS delivers the